Welcome to part 2 of week 1 for Logistics 206. In this section, we're going to talk about the role of purchasing. So let's see where we are in our learning objectives. In the previous presentation, we talked about the introduction to supply chain management. Now, we're going to talk about how the role of purchasing fits within that construct of supply chain management. Then we're going to talk about how purchasing itself as a discipline has changed over time, has evolved, and its strategic importance to the organization. So let's get started. Starting with definitions first. What is purchasing? Now, in your text, they give you a very clear definition, which I really liked. So the function within an organization that makes sure or ensures that materials and services are met by acquiring goods and services at the right quantity, the right place, the right time, while maximizing the service provided and minimizing the total cost. So we're going to be spending a lot of time in this course talking about right place, right quantity, right time, right location, right source, all these R's. We're going to talk about the 6 R's. So it's going to really have a great opportunity to live out this definition week over week in our topics. Now, purchasing has been around for a long time. In fact, as far as there's been consumerism or trade business, there's been purchasing. Just as a discipline in industry, it has really changed in the last 50 or so years. So how it's evolved. We looked at transactional type purchasing. I need to buy something, so I go a place, I make a transaction and move on. No relationship established, just I know where to get the product, let's move on. As businesses started to evolve and say, maybe we can get more bang for our buck, or get a little more value is another way of saying that. We should establish contracts and have rules of engagement and how each company will deal with each other. And maybe if we make commitments to each other, we'll get a little bit more pricing advantage, or we'll get service advantage. So we start going, okay, let's purchase on contract. And then say, okay, now we have these contracts in place. How else can we drive improvements with the supply aspect of our business? One of the things we looked at is how do we select suppliers? How do they become chosen suppliers of our organization? Maybe we should have some rules or guidelines on who we accept, and so we can ensure that the relationship will work. And then once we've established suppliers, let's develop them and integrate, supply chain thinking here, integrate their processes into our processes and vice versa, and continually improve. Which leads to that final stage of evolution. We look at total supply chain competitiveness from start to finish, and going, maybe our suppliers have great ideas that we can share with our customers. Or maybe our customers have expectations and ideas on how to integrate our business and improve our competitiveness we should share with our supply base. And you notice there's 4 different boxes here in this evolution. Now, it's no coincidence. I mentioned the SCORE reference before. This is really the evolution of how companies approach purchasing as well. Now, purchasing is the transactional side, the act of actually making the purchase. Now, as we move towards the right-hand side of this evolution, the supply chain competitiveness, what we're talking about is integration and the functions of procurement. So here on this slide, I'll show you the functions of purchasing and procurement. Now, some companies, they don't differentiate. You'll see job postings saying purchasing manager, who has really responsibility for internal and externally focused functions. That is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that organization. Typically, it's smaller organizations that either have a purchasing function or procurement function. They call them, they just do both things, and that's perfectly okay. Larger organizations sometimes separate them, and they say purchasing by definition is more internally focused on the organization. It was, how do we do the buying function? How do we actually purchase product and services from potential suppliers? Usually buying off contract or approved listings or other methods. Sometimes the decision is just who we've always purchased from. Purchasing, because it supports the day-to-day operations, their most immediate customer in the supply chain is the internal functions of the business. So it could be the shop floor, It can be internal departments. And unless you're buying product that is purchased and then sold out the back door, which we call direct to our customers or reselling, there's a little interaction outside of there. So if you're looking for jobs in this area, purchasing type roles, internally focused, are things like buyers, material planners, purchasing supervisors, and managers. Those are typical job titles. Titles do change, but really read the roles and responsibilities and see if they're more internally focused or external. Externally focused or procurement-related activities relate to sourcing and supplier relationships and contracts and developing the supplier into integrating processes. Their immediate customers are the purchasing department themselves. They work together. So supplier performance isn't meeting the supplier expectations of contract, procurement and purchasing functions work together. That's why oftentimes they're combined. Internal customers as well, them operations, engineering, sales, and marketing. Types of roles in the externally facing side of procurement would be things like supplier development specialist, supplier development engineers, sourcing, anything sourcing, procurement-y, kind of development. You get the theme of working on the outside in the organization, in integration. These are all good things, and they do work together. And so through the evolution of things, if you're just focusing internally, you know where you're at in that stage of evolution of purchasing, all of which are still equally valid. They build on each other. In an effort of continuous improvement and improving competitiveness, what organizations do is they look for ways to align the purchasing strategies to the organization strategy as a whole. So, if the organization as a whole has a supply chain strategy that includes global sourcing, procurement, and purchasing will have to adapt to be able to work in a global environment. So the scope of procurement activities can vary based on organization, as well as the amount of alignment. And it has to do with that supply chain evolution and development through the SCORE reference. So that's just a quick reference on how purchasing relates in supply chain. Purchasing is strategically important to the success of supply chains. Without having things purchased, companies can't make stuff. Without making stuff, companies cannot make money. They are part of the fuel in the engine of the supply chain business. So we're going to spend the next few weeks of this course really digging into what makes great purchasing and procurement decisions happen, and what is necessary for those 6 R's I mentioned, just a prelude there, of what we're going to cover in the next few weeks. How do we accomplish those 6 R's in the best possible way? So just to make sure we covered everything in this presentation, let's take a look again at those learning objectives. We talked about how purchasing fits within that role of supply chain, and how purchasing and procurement have evolved, and how important it is to the overall success of an organization. Now, there's a lot of information here in the last couple of presentations and in your text, and this is a new topic for many of you. Please feel free to reach out and ask questions. As you go through the activities, if you have any need for clarification, please reach out to me. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to reading through your activities. Thank you, and have a great week.